I have parents that have Scandinavian. My mother's parents both came from Sweden, and my dad's grandparents came from Norway. At home, when we were growing up, there was sort of a constant banter back and forth about making a little bit of fun of each other's heritage, but in a nice way. And but there really was none of this music that I heard growing up. It was what my parents liked, which was jazz and big band. But then in my late 20s, I got interested in international folk dances. So I was listening to music from all different places, mostly in Eastern and Western Europe, but other places too. And it got me to thinking about my heritage. And I started digging into it, and because I just, love music, the natural thing to do was to look into the music. So that's really when I started getting interested, and I guess I got addicted. I got a fiddle and I got an accordion, and it just grew from there. Mary and I were traveling in Sweden in about 1989 and went to several Nisswa-stämmor in Sweden, and the biggest one is called the Nisswa-stämman. And when I got home, I probably was traveling up in Nisswa and saw the pioneer village up there, which was a perfect little spot for a gathering of musicians. It's a bunch of historic log buildings that have been put together. I think I talked to Ingrid Anderson, who's a friend of mine up there, about doing this, and she encouraged me to talk to the board at the village, and that's how it started. The first year we did it, it was mostly Minnesota musicians, and Mr. Anderson, who owned the village at the time, encouraged me when we were going through the line at the smorgasbord. He said, it might be nice to have some musicians from Scandinavia come too, and I could probably help you out with that a little bit. Luckily, since I've been doing this for so long, I already knew several musicians in Sweden and Norway to ask, so it wasn't that hard to find people who wanted to come over. And I find that's true now, that as the festival's gone on, musicians will come and go, and when they go back home, they'll tell their friends that, hey, that was kind of a good time. So I haven't had that much trouble convincing other people to come over, and I think it's because the way that the festival is run, that because I'm a musician, mostly I'm thinking about the musicians, and if they're happy, the audience is naturally going to be happy, and so I focus on them. January is usually kind of quiet for me, so it's a good time for me to really dig into starting with stemma arrangements. I'm spending a lot of time at the computer, pounding out emails and doing searches, and so I pretty much keep at it in January and February, between chopping wood and working out in my workshop. The word Nisswa-stämma is a combination of actually an Ojibwa word and a Swedish word, which is curious. Stämma in Sweden is a gathering of musicians, and Nisswa is the name of our little hamlet where we have the event. Nisswa-stämma is held generally what we call the second weekend in June, and it's basically a 2-day event, Friday during the day is instrumental singing, dancing workshops for anyone who wants to sign up and take them. And we'll have one master musician, or maybe two, and demonstrate a tune or playing their instrument, the way to play a certain style of music. And then everybody will get their instruments out and learn maybe 2 or 3 tunes in 2 hours. It can be fairly intense, or it might be more relaxed. It all depends on the musician's style. So you don't need to be an expert or even hardly a intermediate. You can be a beginner as long as you have the desire to try. Besides instrumental workshops, we've had singing workshops, and we always have dance workshops too. The Friday concert is held at the Lutheran Church of the Cross, which is just south of Nisswa, about a mile. They've got a nice acoustics, really nice visuals, and we usually fill it up. The capacity is about 500 people, so it's a pretty amazing event. And it's what I call a sampler concert. So it'll start out with actually our local group called School Club, and then program starts, and it's a sampler of, usually includes most of the musicians that have come over from Scandinavia, and then some local musicians, and each group only plays maybe 2 or 3 or 4 tunes, and then it's the next group. So it's a lot of music, a lot of talent in kind of a short time. It goes till about 9, so it's 2 hours long. There are 2 evening dances. Friday night dance starts late because it has to be after our concert. So I believe it starts about 9 o'clock or 9:30 and goes till 1. Both dances are held at the Legion, American Legion in Nisswa, which has a surprisingly nice wooden dance floor. Saturday night dance is a longer dance, starts at 7 and goes to 1. And it's rather incredible because we have so many musicians that every half hour we have a new band. So if you think about that, from 7 to 1, that's quite a few bands. I can't even count how many, like 10 or 12. The parade is comprised of all of the musicians who've been invited to perform. Usually they all take part, so it's really kind of neat. The parade takes about 3 city blocks or so, and then in the end we cross over and enter the Pioneer Village and gather at what is called the Allspell stage. Of course, it can't possibly hold 150 musicians, so people first fill up the stage and then spread out on both sides, and then we do a tradition called Allspell, where we'll play for maybe 45 minutes, just common tunes that everyone knows. It's a pretty neat part of the event. One thing people have remarked about it is the actual setting of the festival, the grounds, the huge Norway pines there. It's just a really lovely spot to have a folk music event. It's a collection of old log buildings that weren't originally in this spot, but gathered and put together. So it gives you this feeling of, in Sweden, what they call a gammelgården, an old historic farm that's been preserved as a museum. As the festival has grown, we've needed to add more food. Now we have what we call a kaffebordet, which is basically the coffee tent, and coffee and sweets, and then we have 2 savory food booths now with Scandinavian foods of different types that will get you through the day. With Nisswa-stämman, I hope to keep the interest going in this music, and perhaps even generate some interest that wasn't there before in the general public. And of course, we want to foster more and younger musicians coming to perform. First of all, I just love the feeling at Nisswa-stämman. It feels like it's a big family, you know. Lots of kids, and just the feeling that, you know, music can bring people together. And of course, if it happens to be their heritage too, you know, but it doesn't need to be. I've had a lot of people comment to me that they have absolutely no Scandinavian heritage, but they just love the feeling of the event. So that's what I want to keep. I want to keep it pure and just keep it about the music, and it's just about the Scandinavian music. I'm hoping, especially by bringing younger musicians over from Scandinavia, and there are tons of them, and there's a real interest there in their folk music, that we can get some of the younger folks here to see that this can be pretty cool stuff. And we do have the children's tent, and we have our local guy, Arnie Anderson, who started a kids fiddling group that's pretty amazing. One thing that's unique about our festival is that it's a pan-Scandinavian festival. And in Minnesota there are several other Scandinavian festivals. Some of them will be focusing on one nationality. But with ours, since I'm including any Scandinavian group here in Minnesota. To augment the locals, and I usually try to arrange for players from Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland to come also. So it's a pretty good representation. It was always important to me to make sure that this event would be welcoming to families, because I wanted young parents with their kids to be able to come. I've had instructors and performers in there that can show kids some of the basic customs through music and moving and some craft work and decorating a maypole and making a little parade and putting it up.
A lot of people wonder why it's called a maypole or a majstång, like the month of May. But May means greening, and it is when the world is greening up and they dress it, and it is to celebrate summer solstice. And we raise it, and it takes many people to put it up.
And the kids' tent has grown into quite a huge thing. Maybe have, during 1 hour, maybe have like 70, 80 people at the tent. I've got one of our staffers there that keeps a count every hour. She's pretty amazing. So I'm really happy with that, and hoping that it grows. It's a good thing.
I think festivals like Nisswa are doing a good job reminding everybody there's a time before we were here, and think of everything's connected in a long line of traditions, and I think that's really good.
This stämman here in Nisswa is a unique and wonderful part of all of our lives in Minnesota, and even many Swedes come here special. It is so much like is done in Sweden, and it's grown beyond what I could ever imagine. we all look forward every year to being here.
Well, this event's important to me because of my Scandinavian heritage, and I think that as a festival, it focuses us on together on our shared heritage. Not saying it's any better than anyone else's, but we're keeping our little slice going and hoping that it's going to keep going. That's all we can do. So, after 15 years, I think maybe it's working.